Hey, this is Cameron. Welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. I'm joined here with Tom Spellman, and we're going to look at what happens, what do you do when a fruit tree fails? Let's get busy. So I'm so honored. Tom, thanks for joining me. Tom's
my pleasure, Cameron.
Dave Wilson Nursery. You guys are the U.S.'s largest producer of fruit trees.
Yeah, we claim to be, yeah.
Well, you guys plant, hundreds of thousands or millions of trees, don't you?
This year for the 2020 harvest season, we're going to market about 14 million trees.
Okay. Let's put it, you make way more trees than I make. Well, we want to look today at what happens, when you're a backyard grower, you plant a tree and you got hopes for it, and sometimes it doesn't work out.
Well, there's always situations where trees are going to fail or people put the wrong variety in the wrong location. So there's those situations. But let's look at this first. I was intrigued when I walked out here and I saw this old decrepit peach tree. And you indicated that this was on your property when you purchased the house. The property goes back to the mid-1970s.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess this was one of the old, Armstrong trees out of the mid-1970s, probably when I was working for them in 1977 or so. And it's done its job. It's been here a long time. It still has some life on it. You told me that you got some fruit on it this summer.
Yeah, we made a peach pie.
So this is a situation where this tree has probably outlived any commercial expectations. It's been here for the better part of 40 years, and it's produced and produced and produced, and it's probably at a point where it's done. It's ready to be taken out. So the first thing that I think of when I see an old, dying, decrepit tree is that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to come in and do something new. And you've got to consider this a success story. This isn't a failure. This is a tree that's been here for decades and probably produced thousands of peaches over the years, and it's just old and tired. So time to put something else in.
It makes me think of the idea that, when you plant a tree, you just think of hearing about these hundreds of year old trees. And so it's easy to assume that peach trees and all of these other trees have a hundreds of year lifespan as well. But in terms of their fruiting age and their fruiting life and their effective life, they've got varying life expectancies.
Absolutely. Varying life expectancies is a good way to put it. So on anything in the prunus family, peach, plum, nectarine, almond, apricot, interspecifics, cherries, you can probably figure on about a 15 to 25 year expectancy for good production.
Wow.
So this tree far outlived that.
Yeah.
It probably did almost double that, or maybe even more. So it's just old and tired. And I wouldn't take it out until after Halloween, personally, because I think it's the perfect example of a great old craggly, Halloween tree. But this was a great place to start because it's done. It's got sunburn. It's got borers. It has all the issues that any old prunus is going to pick up, and it's still managed to hang on and produce some fruit.
Give us a few more. You can see a couple of dried fruit on there. One of the last trophy of its last hurrah.
So thank you, baby. Thank you for giving us a long, healthy life and doing everything you needed to do for 4 decades.
I love it. We're going to move over to a tree that we planted that's a lot newer tree that hasn't performed for us the way that we had hoped, and so we might talk through a couple of options.
Let's take a look.
Okay, so here, Tom, we're right by this Belagold picatum. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, picatum.
Picatum. And unlike the Flavor Grenade Pluot and the Santa Rosa Plum and really a lot of the other stuff, this thing has produced only 2 or 3 fruit, and I don't know what to do. What are my options here?
Well, Cameron, first of all, it's not what I would consider a fully mature tree. I oftentimes people will look at something like a red Baron peach or an Anna apple that produce fruit in the 2nd year.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, how come this didn't give me fruit in the 2nd year? But some varieties like this, some of the interspecifics, take a little bit longer to come into production. So this tree you indicated is about 4 years old.
Right.
And I would say the growth that you've had this season has been good. You're starting to develop quite a bit of secondary flowering wood down here within the structure. So I'm going to say, give this another full season, and watch its bloom character. It needs a pollinator, so you need to make sure it blooms. You've got a couple of other varieties right here, a flavor grenade and a cotton candy abrium. So as long as it blooms simultaneous with those, I think that you're going to get some fruit on it in the near future.
So let's say that we wait another 5 years. Now let's say it's 10 years in the ground and it's still same situation. We're only getting 2-3 fruit. What might be a reason why, first of all, why we might not be getting fruit on any kind of the tree?
There's so many variables as far as that goes. You could have the wrong rootstock for your soil type. You could have a lack of cross-blooming pollinators. You could have a lack of chill hours, which typically in this area we've had over the last several years during the drought period. We had very, very few accumulated chill hours. So it could be related to any or all of those things. So you just want to take a look at those one by one and say, what do I have control over and what don't I have control over? So the things that you can do that you have control over are irrigation and fertilization. So you want to make sure that you're irrigating properly. This looks fine. You've obviously been irrigating it well through the summer growing season. So then you want to consider fertilization. Am I feeding at the right time? Am I feeding with the right product? So if you want to grow a tree, we're going to use a higher nitrogen fertilizer. And the nitrogen is what's going to give us that nice growth flush. So this tree to me now is at about the perfect height. It's something where I want to keep it right here.
Reach everything.
I want this height where I can reach everything. So at this point now that it's of a manageable height, I'm going to switch my fertilizer program over to a low nitrogen, higher phosphorus, higher potash trace elements. So zinc, iron, and manganese in very small numbers, and probably 2 to 3 times the amount of P and K as nitrogen. So
I know you use, and I use here too, the Flower and Bloom Grow Power Flower
and Bloom.
3-12-12.
It's been a great product for me. So that's where you want to concentrate on feeding this tree with that product in the future. And timing is also important. You want to make sure that you're feeding early in the growing season so that the tree can take advantage of all those nutrients in the ground. So first feeding probably end of January, 1st of February. Second feeding sometime in April. One more feeding about the end of June or the 1st of July, and you're done for the season. So you're really looking at kind of a 6-month on, 6-month off. If you come in now in end of August or early September and you feed again, you run the risk of putting this tree back into a growth flush when you want it to start to go dormant.
Yeah, we want it slowing down.
You want it to slow down. From this point on, you want it to slow down. You want those tips to harden up, which they've done pretty effectively. And this tree, I think, is well on its way to becoming a productive specimen in your landscape.
What are some of our options if it's just not working? I mean, it feels like a failure sometimes because you put a lot of yourself into these trees, and you plant it, you pick out a variety, you put it in the ground, you kind of look for it, it flowers, and then you come out and check out. And then let's say 10 years from now, this just isn't cutting it. What are our options?
Well, you're more patient than I am. I'm not going to give it 10 years, but I think another couple of years in the ground is a reasonable expectation. So at that point, if it's been in the ground 6 years or 7 years and it's not productive, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to chop it off and I'm going to graft something else into it, or I'm going to take it out and I'm going to put something else in its place. So first of all, you've got to consider, is it in the right place to begin with? And it looks like this one is. If it's not, then, hey, maybe I should put, maybe this is an area that doesn't get cold enough to build up winter chill. So maybe I should put a subtropical here instead. Maybe a citrus or an avocado or a mango would be better suited for this location. But if it is the right location, then I'm gonna graft it over to some other stone fruits. I can put non-patented peach, plum, apricot, nectarine. You could even graft an almond into it if you wanted to. So or put all of the above in there if you wanted to. You could turn it into a fruit salad tree. Absolutely. So you have other options. Either restructure or replace.
Is there any reason why grafting onto an existing structure is better than just going and putting an entirely new tree in there? Well,
from my perspective, you now have a rootstock that's established in that soil that's been there for 4, 5, or 6 years. So I'm starting off with a tree that already has adaptability and is stabilized in the landscape. So you're going to get push on the new grafts that you put in. You're virtually going to have production in the second year. So that's one reason to take advantage of it. As long as it's the right variety for the right location in your landscape.
Yeah, we're not replacing Picotum with another Bella Gold Picotum. We're going to try something else that might work out.
Yeah, and you got to figure not every variety is adaptable to every location. So there's always going to be varieties that are just not going to be productive for one reason or another. Hey, I've failed with dozens of varieties over the years, and I always look at failure as an opportunity. You're not going to be successful with everything, so do something else that you think you can be more successful.
And ultimately, these are individuals.
Yes.
Just because you bought it at a nursery in a pot doesn't, it's got to do its own thing, and it's susceptible to lots of stuff as well. So, yeah, I think that's really helpful. Hey, I hope this has been helpful for you and has given you a little bit of maybe emotional cover to not feel too frustrated or upset if you got a tree that isn't doing for you what you thought it might do when you first planted it. Like Tom, you said, it's an opportunity to try a new type of tree, try a new kind of method, maybe paying attention to some of the things you're doing in the orchard and around your tree in terms of feeding and watering. So I want to thank you for tuning into this episode of The Busy Gardener, where we looked at what to do if your tree isn't doing for you. Tom, I so appreciate you coming by and speaking to these to the viewers here. Hey, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel, do you think they ought to subscribe?
I really think they should subscribe.
Do
right
it.
away,
Do
right
it
now.
This second, while you're watching. Well, whether you got one tree in your orchard or 500, until next time, stay busy.